Hello and welcome everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Steve Recchia, Vice President at ERS. On behalf of myself and ERS, I'd like to thank you all for joining our webinar today, which is specific to skip tracing. This is our 7th webinar in the past 2 years, and I must say I'm really excited about today's webinar as the individuals we have speaking today are amongst the best we have from our campus-based collection staff when it comes to skip tracing. Before we get started, I have a couple items regarding today's format, starting with the audio and video. If you have any issues, please contact GoToWebinar support, and they'll be able to assist you with any troubles that you're having. Additionally, if during the presentation you have any questions for our speakers, there's a chat function on the right-hand side of your screen. Please enter the question into there, and one of our facilitators will ask the question either during the presentation or at the end of the presentation. My final comment is that our next webinar will be in December, and that subject will be compliance, and that date is scheduled for Thursday, December 5th. My final comment is that the ERS Ops staff will be speaking today have made their emails available to everyone, and you'll see the emails at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions that don't get asked or at any point in time, they've made it available, so feel free to contact them at any point in time. With that being said, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the Bursar brothers, the internationally acclaimed Denny DeSantis, and David Glazerman. Gentlemen, all yours.
Thank you, Steve. And this is Denny DeSantis, and on behalf of David Glazerman and I, we would like to welcome everyone out there for this this topic on skip tracing. I don't think you can ever learn enough about this this idea of skip tracing. Now, David, I remember talking or thinking about skip tracing, and I go back to the late 70s. I think we're dating ourselves, but I remember introducing the first technology project to our collections office at the University of Pittsburgh at the time. And it was a mainframe application, and we generated personalized letters to borrowers. And the letters were just magnificent. They were, we had no idea if the address, but the letters were just absolutely great. So, and that's why we had file cabinets of white pages for all the major cities throughout the U.S. Do you remember that, David?
Oh, Denny, that's great. Well, good morning, everyone. I agree with you. I remember the days of having literally hundreds of phone directories trying to find people, and just the time you'd spend finding the right directory or hoping you'd find the right directory. Then I got smart and learned about something called the crisscross directory, so I could look at an address, find the phone number, or try vice versa. And that was great too, but I'll tell you, when we finally started getting to the electronic age, and didn't need all those file cabinets, didn't need paper directories, and we had something like 411.com to look up a phone number, I thought we had it made. But today, there's just so much out there, so many tools available, and you know, I can't think, I could never go back to the way it was. I mean, I don't even know if you could find a crisscross directory today the way I envisioned it. I'd probably have a lot of trouble at best. But today we've got our panelists, Greg Brown, who's a senior production manager, and Dean Cash, senior collector at ERS. These are the men that really know how to do it. And we're going to spend the next hour or so talking about some of the things that you can do on your campuses to try and locate those missing students, those borrowers who decided they wanted to disappear from the face of the earth. So either because they want to evade a debt, or maybe because they just forgot that they owe us a valid address. So what I'd like to do is turn the program over now to Greg to talk a little bit about some of the basics involved with online skip tracing. Greg?
Good. Thank you, David. My name is Greg Brown. I, as David had mentioned, am the Senior Production Manager in the College and Universities Division here at Enterprise Recovery Systems. I've been with Enterprise Recovery Systems here for about 9 years. This is the only agency I've worked for, and I've kind of progressed from the intro-level collector to a team leader to a supervisor of our Perkins Loan Department onto collections manager to my present position now as the senior production manager of the department. Have had some accomplishments along the way. One that I'm particularly proud of is the monthly fee record, which was established during the latter portion of my collection tenure here at the company. I've been also proud to say a member of the management team here in college and universities that has kind of set the bar here and established pretty much all the major departmental records in terms of production and so on and so forth in the department. And one of the primary reasons, or one of the big contributing factors that has allowed me to be successful here has been a real basic yet integral approach to skip tracing and locating borrowers and solving mysteries and finding lost students. So with my background here, I'd like to kind of go into some of the basic processes that is kind of provided the foundation for solid skip tracing. I'll go through some of the basic processes here in the approach that I have, and then from there I'll pass it over to Dean Cash, who will go through more specific applications of the processes to illustrate the importance of the foundation itself. So the basis for skip tracing, what I try and do when I'm speaking specifically about internet skip tracing, is there's three primary areas that I like to begin with. And the first stop always, for myself at least here, is integrating Google and Yahoo as the basis behind the skip tracing. I know that most of the time, but not all the time, most of the time you'll get similar hits between Google and Yahoo. However, I have found here through trial and error that as you enter certain information into Google, you might find something on Google that you don't find on Yahoo and vice versa. So that's why I like to use a combination of the two, just by having a couple of windows open and just using a basic copy and paste and just comparing the information to see what is different between the two and then taking it from there. So we have, of course, Google and Yahoo. And then when you're skip tracing, most of the time, I would say 90 to 95% of the time, what you're looking for is the borrower's place of employment. And one of the primary avenues to find places of employment, especially in 2013, is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a website in which it has a borrower's professional background, so on and so forth. It'll also give you their resume, so to speak, in terms of where they've gone to school and so forth, and especially in campus-based collections, which I've specialized in here for the past 9 years, that is very helpful in determining, that you have the right borrower and so forth. And then there's Facebook as well. And these days, Facebook, especially with younger individuals, many of which we deal with here coming right out of school, Facebook is an excellent way to locate the borrowers. Now, with these, of course, with Google and Yahoo, you don't need any particular passcode or anything like that. Just about anybody that has a computer can sign on to Google or Yahoo and begin their search there. Whereas when you move into LinkedIn and Facebook, there are some limitations if you're not signed up for these sites. For instance, LinkedIn, there are a number of options. You can go in there basic, or you can go into one of their where you provide your email address for a basic account. And I do suggest having a basic account for LinkedIn. They offer a premium subscription as well. However, for these purposes, for skip tracing, having a premium pay per month subscription is not necessary. Just the basic, providing your email address and so on and so forth will allow you to access information from different LinkedIn pages and so forth to at least pinpoint the information that you're looking for, which again, of course, is the place of employment. Facebook, much of the same, very similar to LinkedIn. I do suggest having some type of a Facebook account. I would suggest, I know it's been kicked around here at ERS, we're thinking about going to a corporate Facebook page, which of course would prevent or restrict collectors from, kind of wandering, seeing what's going on with their friends, starting some chit-chat and so forth, and, deviating from, getting the job done and so forth, and, actually locating borrowers as opposed to communicating with their friends. But the basic idea is with Facebook, if you have a Facebook page, that will allow you to access more information than it would if you're just going in without one. So as I mentioned, Google and Yahoo is where I always start my initial search for the borrowers before I go to LinkedIn and Facebook. And the reason being is that oftentimes as opposed to signing into LinkedIn or signing into Facebook and so forth. If you start out a basic search on Google, a lot of times it'll bring up in the links and the hits that you get right off the bat their LinkedIn page, their Facebook page, so on and so forth. Now, to access that information, again, it is good to have a subscription to one of those two so you can get the full gamut of information. But a lot of times you won't even have to go specifically to LinkedIn or Facebook. If you go in through the portal of Google, then you can find it right away off the top. Now, one of the limitations with Google, if you don't use it specifically, which I'll get into here momentarily, is limiting your searches. So, for instance, if you were looking for myself and you went into Google and you typed in the name Greg Brown, good luck. You're going to get so many hits. You'll probably get millions of hits, so on and so forth. And who has time to look through that many hits? The idea is to get as much information, as much specific information, the quickest way possible so that you can locate the borrower and move on to other borrowers and take the same approach. So ways to limit the information down. A lot of times it's just a matter of really asking yourself what you know about the borrower. And a lot of times, like if you look at a borrower's credit report or something along those lines and you're using the information that's been provided on your system, a lot of times if you see as maybe a former place of employment on there, maybe you'll see something along the lines of Glenbrook Hospital or Evanston Hospital or something like that. And a lot of this is just drawing logical conclusions. So if you were looking for somebody that maybe worked at a hospital, you see that on the credit report, it's not always going to be 100% surefire, but again, drawing logical conclusions is key. If you could maybe think something along the lines of maybe they're a doctor, maybe they're a nurse. And what do I know about doctors and nurses? Well, we know the abbreviations. You can maybe throw in the word doctor. You could throw in a keyword such as hospital, something basic like that. I know another keyword to throw in when you're searching on Google and Yahoo is just the basic word contact, because that's what we're all setting out to do here, is to contact the borrower. And a lot of times when you're looking through web pages and things of that nature, it'll say to reach Greg Brown, contact, 800-377, something along those lines. And just the word contact will help you to take it to the phone numbers. So identifying keys that you see right off the bat on the file itself and mixing those in with the actual name as you're searching through Google and Yahoo is going to be key. It's definitely going to be key. So once you've identified the information, it's imperative to mix and match the information as well. So we're going and narrowing the scope of the search to pinpoint specific borrower information is also key. For instance, if you were to go into a Google search and you put in, using my example, my name, of course, if you put in just Greg Brown, you're going to get every hit, and you just put that in basic into a Google search, you're going to get hits for every article or hit on the internet, or at least on Google search internet, that's going to show you every article that has the word Greg and has the word Brown, or in many cases, or most cases, it's not going to be the name Brown, it's going to be the color Brown. So you're going to get millions and millions of hits. So the key is to narrow the scope of your search by, number one, roping off or blocking off the name itself by surrounding it with quotations. For instance, if you were to put just in Greg Brown, you would get the scenario that I just outlined. If you were to throw my name into quotes, now you're going to get hits. You're going to get hits on the internet that are looking for the sequence of Greg Brown in the article, back-to-back being the names. So, of course, that's going to narrow the hits. It's going to eliminate a lot of, like using my example, like the color brown or something like that. Logically, if you have a first name, a lot of times your second name will be listed in an article right after that. So once you've put in the quotes in there as well, for using myself as an example here, my name is Gregory Edward Brown. And we know this about all the borrowers that we deal with. Usually we run through the borrower, or we run through the file itself, and if you throw in the first, middle, and last name, so in my case, Gregory Edward Brown, I like to start broad on those searches. So if I were looking for myself, I would throw into a Google search and I'd put it in quotation marks. I would put my full name. I would start broad and then narrow it down. So I would throw into the quotes on there, Gregory Edward Brown, and I would see what I get. So for instance, and this is a very common scenario, especially these days, as a lot of young people especially, which we deal with, looking for jobs and so forth, on their resumes, generally speaking, a borrower or an individual per se is going to list their entire name on their resume. And it's amazing how many people these days have resumes posted online where if you were to just put in like a simple Greg Brown, you wouldn't find their resume. You'd find it under their entire name, Gregory Edward Brown. So what I suggest when it comes to names is you start general, you put in the full name, and then narrow it down. So I would go, logically, I'd go from Gregory Edward Brown to Gregory E. Brown with E, E abbreviated. Maybe from there I would move on to something like Gregory Brown. And then maybe from there, another one that I found has been key for me through the years is, of course, we're looking for places of employment. Now, as I mentioned, when you rope a name off with quotation marks on a Google or Yahoo search, it's going to look for something listed specifically in that order. But what you're going to be missing is a lot of places of employment have rosters where they list the names alphabetically. So if you were to list Gregory Brown on there, and maybe let's just say for the sake of discussion, which we don't, but if Enterprise Recovery Systems had an alphabetical directory and it was Brown, Gregory on the website, I would be missing that. So you want to mix and match, and I would suggest putting the last name, first name, and of course doing Brown, Gregory, or Brown, Greg, so on and so forth, to, kind of leave no stone unturned as you're looking through these. And the general mindset that I think is imperative to a successful skip tracer is it's a constant evolution as you're looking for the borrower, and it's a process of asking yourself, what do I know about this borrower? And now, while we don't know these individuals firsthand, or we don't know them, as acquaintances, we do know certain key demographic information about, generally speaking, about all the borrowers that we're looking for. And the main things that I have found to be successful for myself is we always know their name, which we've talked about that. In my world of collections in college and universities, I always know the school that they went to. And then the other thing that we generally know about all the borrowers that we're working with is we know key demographic information, meaning what areas has this borrower lived in. And there's main areas that I would suggest, or main areas I would look to find this information would be the credit report and maybe like an Accurant or a TLO skip trace site. And you're going to look for trends regarding the person you're looking for. So for instance, if I pulled up a credit report, using myself as an example, and I were to see on the credit report a certain town listed again and again and again, if there's 8 hits, if I see, let's say, 6 or 7 hits for Oak Brook, Illinois, and I see 1 hit for, let's just say, Normal, Illinois, and maybe I was a student from Illinois State University, it would be logical to draw the conclusion that maybe I live in Oak Brook, went down to school in Normal, Illinois, where the school that I attended was, and came back home to Oak Brook, Illinois. So in addition to asking yourself the question, what do I know about the borrower, what do I know about the areas in which I'm seeing these trends? And things that you always know about areas is you'll always know the area code of those areas, or the basic area code, the primary area codes used in that area. So what I would suggest incorporating into a search is when you're looking for somebody, maybe take into account, a logical conclusion of where you think they might be located and what the area code is in that area, and maybe throw that outside your search. So for somebody like myself, I would use 630. Now, it's a little bit more difficult to do in a metropolis area like Chicago, because you have, probably a dozen different area codes across the Chicagoland area. But for instance, if you're looking for a borrower in, let's just say, South Dakota, now there's only one area code in South Dakota, and that's 605. So if you're looking for somebody in the state of South Dakota and they don't live on the border of maybe Minnesota or North Dakota or what have you, depending upon the corner of the state they're on, it's logical to think that if you find a phone number for them, as long as it's not a toll-free number, the contacting number is going to be listed 605. So that's something to take into account as well, and put that outside of the quotes as you're looking for the borrower. So you know that much about the borrower. And as I mentioned, another key thing, another logical conclusion, as you're constantly asking yourself the question, what do I know about this borrower, is what do I know about the school that they attended, or what do I know about maybe the background of this individual based on the demographic information that's been provided to me. Now, using the example Illinois State University, now it's a teaching school. So what I would do is I would kind of look at the school, and I would kind of look at the professions that they logically might go into. And it's not the be-all, end-all, but again, you're just asking yourself, what do I know about the borrower? What do I know about the area? What do I know about their background? And you're going to take that information, and you're going to list that outside of the quotes outside of the name and so forth, because you're getting more and more specific as your search goes on. And this is something that as you move through this process, it's just a constant, and this is how I explain it to my collectors, is you should always be asking yourself the question, what do I know about this borrower? What do I know about this area? And as you start to answer those questions, that will logically move you along in terms of the ideas that you may have, the thinking outside the box, dropping in different location information, logical conclusions such as area codes, areas of study. Another key thing is when you go on a credit report, a lot of things people don't look for is, especially with females, if maybe they have a maiden name or a married name. Maybe they're just recently married, but all their information's under their maiden name. So you have to make sure that you've left no stone unturned, and you're not just looking for the current name on the file, but maybe previous names that they've had as well, or maybe even hyphenated names, if maybe they've been divorced or married or so on and so forth. So you don't want to leave any stone unturned, and you want to take advantage of the information that you have and logically apply it to the file itself to help narrow down. Maybe you start off with several million hits, and as you move on, as you start to plug in more specific information, you're going to narrow that down to 100,000 hits. Then you're going to narrow it down to maybe 5,000 hits. Ideally, you want to get this down to 100 or less hits. That's my cutoff point, because and you're going to scan pages, of course. You're not going to read through all that, but you don't have all day, because especially in this business, as we all know, time is money. And if you get too caught up and you dig in too deep, you're really going to sell yourself short, and maybe there's a real easy one right around the corner that if you dig in too deep and you spend too much time, that you didn't get a chance to get to. So just applying these things and kind of going across the surface, you can kind of weed out, ones that are, maybe you'll get back to at a later point, or I always say go for the lowest hanging fruit first, because get those out of the way and then dig in from there. So some of the other areas here that I think are also important is reversing phone numbers. So for instance, if I find a phone number for somebody that I'm looking for and I call the number online and I'm not sure what that phone number is, maybe if I reverse that phone number in a phone reversal site, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, maybe like an Accurint or something like that, or even a switchboard, plugging that in, maybe that number is disconnected, but maybe it goes to a certain type of business. Maybe it goes to a school. Maybe it goes to a hospital. But nonetheless, I can draw logical conclusions to say, okay, if this individual went to a school, a medical school, like a Rush University or something, and maybe I'm calling reverse a phone number that went to a hospital, but it's no longer in service, it's logical to draw the conclusion that if they went to school for this and they were doing this previously, there's a pretty good chance that they're probably involved in this field as well. And you can explore down that path and start inserting, search terms such as hospital or medical or things of that nature. And of course, using the word contact, I think that's key as well. So as you move along, you're just looking for possible trends and so forth, and constantly asking the question, what do I know about this borrower? And as you start to discover those things, you're going to want to insert those. Also, especially if you have multiple words, you're going to want to put those in quotes, because again, if you're looking for, let's just say, Elmhurst Hospital, you don't want all the hits on the internet that say Elmhurst. You don't want all the ones that say hospital. You want all the ones that specifically say Elmhurst Hospital, which is going to narrow down the overall scope of your search and kind of put you on the right path if, of course, your hunch or your intuition is correct. You can kind of zero in on those a little bit more specifically and find the person that you're looking at using key bits of information and details that you've uncovered. So that's the basic premise behind the skip trace mindset that I think has been successful for myself and successful for the staff here at ERS. And what I'd like to do at this time is I'd like to pass it over to Dean Cash, who is one of the senior collectors here at Enterprise Recovery Systems. He's an expert skip tracer, and he's going to take some of these processes and he's going to provide more specific examples to kind of apply this information to show more practically how it works and be a little bit more specific. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Dean Cash, and he's going to take it from there.
Thanks, Greg. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dean Cash. I've been here at ERS for 12 years, and been in the collection business for about 24 years. So what I'm going to do is kind of go over some examples of how to find somebody in Yahoo Google, or Facebook. So right now I'm going to talk about how to apply this information on the website specifically, and then we'll go over an example of how I would do this. Again, the key phrase here is to make sure that you're using these quotes. Without the quotes, you're going to have too much information that you're not going to be able to pinpoint what you're looking for. So in my first example here, John Smith, okay, of course, John Smith is a very common name, but by putting in information after the quotes, as in the location, the city that they live in, or the school that they went to, you'll be able to shrink down the information that's out there in the internet to a manageable way to look at the information to try to find the data that you're looking for. And another example with finding the link or the lead information, like, is this person a teacher? Are they in the medical field? What have you. So also, as another example with reversing a phone number, I don't know how many times I put in a phone number that either came in from the client and either it was disconnected or I was able, or it's a good number, we just haven't reached the student yet, where by putting that information in quotes, it may link up to an email address with the individual's job information after it, johnsmith@ersinc.com. You'd be able to get a hit as far as a place of employment on that. In addition, having the specific information regarding the DDS or MD, LPN, LCSW, types of jobs that you assume the borrower is in, use that in that search, either in the quotes or also on the use the DDS on the outside of the quotes. And again, using the name in quotes, and then possibly going off of older information that you have on the credit report to kind of see a trend. Is this person working for an electric company? Has this person worked at the last 3 power companies? So that you can pinpoint power companies in a specific state that they live in. So with that being said, what I will do here is kind of just go over a mock skip tracing example of what I would do to pinpoint information on a student. So I'm getting over here to Google, and for example, I'm typing in John Smith. Okay. So there would be 15,800,000 results under John Smith. Of course, it's a very common name. I prefer the students with different names that aren't common. They're easier to find. But just to give you an example of how we're kind of narrowing that search down, we're going to type in John Smith. And then we're going to type in, for an example, this person lived in Denver. So we went from 15 million to 680,000. Or we can type in University of Colorado. Sorry. We're still at 1,500,000. So if you get rid of that, you can also type in, if there's a small town, the town information. But for the most part, I mean, this name is kind of a bad example, but I didn't want to. We're unable to use an actual account here. So generally speaking, you're going to be able to pinpoint and get down the information down to either 10, 20, 30 different results. And at that point, you would go through and just kind of scroll the information here just to see exactly what information you can read about this borrower. And, you know, generally I'll just kind of do a quick scan here and just kind of see if there's anything that sticks out. I'll go to a couple pages back and forth. And also, just to kind of give you an example, the difference between Yahoo and Google. Okay, so here I copy and paste this from Google to Yahoo. And there were, 600,000 results. And we'll see what we get here as far as the results on Yahoo. So we're only getting 256,000 results. There's an example that Google is giving you more data as a search engine than Yahoo. So that, for the most part, is how it's done as far as looking at the specifics on the Yahoo and Google website. Just to kind of to do myself, for an example, I don't have a LinkedIn. I live in Bolingbrook. So here I am here. I'm also a patched umpire. So if you had that information, umpire. So we're going to go with, there's 342 results with umpire. After it, it's going to go down to 2. Plus, this is my cell phone number. I'm also a board member for the Bolingbrook T-Ball Association with my lovely picture right here. So, not realizing that I actually gave out my cell phone number to the city that the Bolingbrook T-Ball Association that I volunteer for, all my information's out there. So that's the example kind of with Yahoo or Google. I hope this kind of helps you with kind of narrowing down the information. What I'm also going to do is go over the specifics on finding people on Facebook. I've been very successful since Facebook's come to the table here. There's a lot of neat ways to go through Facebook to kind of find the information that you're looking for. And again, this is a huge site, and it's important to kind of shrink down the information so it's manageable for you to find your student. So, as an example on Facebook, and with Facebook's gone through a couple upgrades. I really like the latest one because it gives you more information that you can kind of go into here on the right in the refined this search section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in John Smith. So when you get to this section here, you're going to want to click on Find All People Named John Smith. So this is going to list everyone in Facebook with the last name, with the first name John and last name Smith. You want to look at searching the current city that they live in, Atlanta, Georgia. This way you're not scrolling through every John Smith in every state. You can at least get to a point where you can manage information. One thing I really like is, you know, a lot of people list the school that they attended. So a lot of times when you type in the school information, you'll get 1, 2, or 3 hits. And the probability on that is that one of those are your borrower, and hopefully they have information that you can use that's on their site. Now, also as an example here, I also read through It may look like I'm not working, but I'm actually working. I read through the timeline information because a lot of times the timeline information may indicate either that they're unemployed or that they're working, or maybe they're communicating with one of their colleagues, and maybe you can look at that colleague's Facebook page and maybe they have their job listed on their Facebook, but the student that you're looking for doesn't. So there's a lot of ways to kind of go in through the back door, so to speak, in trying to find people on Facebook that I've been quite successful with. So, and again, the hometown, current city and hometown are crucial. I'll go back and I'll look at their older city that they grew up in, and I'll put that in, and a lot of times it'll get me that data that I need, or the current city that they live in, which also helps you pinpoint the borrower. Now, the nicest, what I think is the nicest thing about Facebook is finding jobs through the students' friends that are listed on their Facebook page. So, for example, I'm going to type in Steve Recchia's Facebook page. We're using this as an example, but we're going to go right to find friends. I just had this saved here. Hold on one second. Sorry. Sorry, Steve. Okay. So when you go into the friends section here, now, I guess because of the terminal that we're on here, usually it will indicate how many, this indicates how many friends that person has, but I guess for whatever reason at this terminal it's not providing me the data. But what I would do here at this point is I would look at the friends and kind of just glance through, you know, where they went to school, or do they work at Target, or do they work at a specific job, and actually write down that information. And I'm looking for information, multiple hits on specific jobs. And I don't know, I can't tell you how many times I've gone in and I've seen 5, 6, 7, 8 people working at the same business, and the probability is quite high that that student also either worked there or is currently working there. And if I had to, and if I knew for sure that they were at Target, I would contact all the Targets in the area. If I had to call 15 or 20 stores to get the student on the phone, that's what I would do to get them. So it's quite amazing, even though the information is not on their main page, that you can get the data that you need coming in from the friends section. So that's kind of a little example here of how at least I do things here at ERS, and how I think a lot of other individuals here do it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of give this over to Denny or David to kind of.
Dean, thank you. We got several questions from participants. I just wanted to start out with one for you and Greg particularly. How important is it when clients are placing accounts? What's the best information you feel that you can utilize, and what's the best information that a client can place with you, and when they're doing a placement? What's most important?
Well, as a collector, the name, the city and state that they live in, maybe their date of birth helps because you can possibly get a match on Facebook for a date of birth, and obviously the school information.
Email addresses as well are key. If you throw into an email address into a Yahoo or a Google, a lot of times that's going to open up some doors for you as well, some paths for you to go down and explore.
Okay, we have a question from Carol, who asks, when calling a debtor, what does the recorded message, quote, "Your call cannot be completed as dialed," mean?
As a collector, to me, it's a disconnected number, and I would just move on.
One interesting question that looks like Cheryl posted is why do you focus on employment rather than the home?
Well, the basis of this session is internet skip tracing, and as far as for home numbers and so forth, there are some more specific avenues like an Accurant or a TLO or an Insight or something along those lines where if you're looking for a home number, that's going to be a little bit more efficient in terms of finding that. Now, as I had mentioned, I'd say 90 to 95% of the time when you're skipping online, you're looking for a place of employment. That's not to say you can't come across home information. It's just, in my opinion, it's a little bit more time efficient to try and locate home numbers through a more specific avenue, something that's geared towards home numbers, like an Accurant or a credit report or something along those lines. So when you're looking online, generally you're looking for the jobs.
And to kind of piggyback off of that question, most students don't have home phones. They have cell phones. And that's the one thing that the reason why we kind of geared towards trying to get the job is because we know we can get them there. I personally canceled my home phone only because I was paying $600 a year for nothing because I'd never used it. So everybody's got a cell phone nowadays, and what I also like to do is when I get an account with a phone number on it from the client or on any number that I find, there are some specific websites that you can go to identify the area code prefix to see if it is a home phone or it is a cell phone. Kind of helps you with the account to know that you're calling a cell or a home phone.
Okay, we have a question here. When it comes to Facebook, how can you really look for student information if the information is able to be hidden, such as phone numbers or addresses? And is there another way around that?
Well, that's all on how the individual sets up the Facebook account. There are certain times where you can pull up the information on Facebook, but their friends are missing, their timelines are vague, and at that point, you won't be able to get information on that specific student. But in my own professional experience, I've noticed that you're going to get a high percentage of data from Facebook. I would say 75+%. You'll be able to kind of look at their likes, look at their friends, and unfortunately, there are times where Facebook sends you to a dead end on that specific borrower, but you got to kind of move on.
If we moving in a slightly different direction, when you're a lot of the research is done, but now when you're trying to contact a borrower through Facebook, Melissa asks a question saying, I know we have to private message them, but exactly what can or can't we say? Melissa thought it needed to be very basic, such as, hello, I am blank from name of school and I'm trying to contact you. Please call or email me and just have that information.
We don't do any of that here at ERS. All we're looking for is information that they've already provided. So we don't instant message or do anything like that. A lot of times, if you go into the section, the bio on the borrower or student, sometimes they've listed their own phone number on the phone number that you're looking for is right there. You just got to scroll down and look at it. But no, we don't do that kind of thing here. So I'd be unable to kind of give you any more details on that.
a little bit too much liability than we're willing to take on. A little bit too much responsibility for a staff full of collectors to kind of give them that ability to communicate outside of something we can monitor more closely. So we don't believe in that here.
And some of the risk you're trying to avoid there is related to fair debt collection practices.
Absolutely.
And I would just say that, while the FD Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, or FDCPA, pertains directly for all third-party collectors, as we're seeing the world change a little bit, a lot of the FDCPA requirements, maybe even stronger in various states, and even first-party collectors at colleges, universities need to be careful in how they're pursuing a consumer. Taking it, as you said, there's some risk involved here. That even the school potentially could be found liable if a student borrower decides to take an action. You have to, again, if you're going to go down that road, and I'm not an attorney, but I think from my experiences, if you're going down this road, I think what Melissa points out is very generic at best and not really trying to put too much information out there. Another question we have from Georgia. Can we contact family members through the debtor Facebook if the debtor does not reply?
I wouldn't recommend it for the same reasons that you've just outlined. It's a little bit too much liability. It's a little bit harder to monitor since it's not. You'd have to be on the right page or the right screen, I should say, from a management perspective at the right time. I think that that's giving a little bit too much leeway in that regard to the staff.
What about confirming information you have on a loan application, say for a parent or a sibling? Would you utilize that if you come across that in a search?
In terms of locating a family member?
Locating, or might you take a different tack, just confirming information that the school might already have?
Well, I don't know about the confirmation aspects of it, but I think that the same processes and the same thought processes to a degree can be applied to family members, maybe locating parents, maybe locating spouses especially. Depending upon where you're calling and what regulations you have in terms of third-party disclosure and so forth, I mean, you'll have to be cognizant of that. But at least locating them, at the very least, to maybe leave a message or something along those lines, that may be the spark you need to initiate contact with the borrower.
Before we go to our next question, just want to remind the audience that if you do have questions, if you put those right into the chat box right now, Greg and Dean will be glad to answer. And a reminder, if any questions come up after the webinar today, we'll show you access for their email addresses so you can ask the experts directly. Denny, got another question?
Yeah, well, there are a few questions about the actual slides themselves. I would check your email because a PowerPoint file should have been sent to you already. So if you have not received the PowerPoint slide, please contact ERS and we'll get one. We'll get another file of this PowerPoint slides to you.
Okay, we have another question from Thea Bullock, who asks, is Bresser's skip tracing manual still available? And if so, does Bresser's have an online resource manual?
I don't even know what that is. Sorry. Greg, do you know?
I'm not aware as well.
Thea, if you can give us some more information in the chat box, that would be helpful. We may be giving us a resource we don't already have. Rashad asks, can you recommend any online resources for locating international students who may have left the country? International collections is a real problem at many institutions right now. So, Jen, I'm going to throw the floor open.
Well, when I originally started trying to find somebody on overseas, I think the best way to do that is not to try to find a yellow pages or white pages for the specific country. What I would do is I would use that Yahoo and Google in quotes and then indicate, what country they're in, and then kind of go off of that. And a lot of times you'll be able to get the phone number right off the one of the search hits on Yahoo or Google, and you'll have their job or possibly their cell phone number that'll come up. I've been quite successful with finding people overseas. I kind of I get a kick out of it because it's very difficult to do that. But if you type and you put the right information in Yahoo or Google, you can get your information on your student that's overseas.
A lot of times, just using the processes that we've described, just applying those to international borrowers, using like 011, which you're going to use to dial out to an international number. Just throwing that sometimes outside of the quotes and combined with the borrower's name or information like that may lead you to the phone number that you're looking for, the international number that is.
Another key point on that is typing in the name of the school that they graduated from or went to. A lot of times there are bios on the employees, and you'd be able to possibly narrow your search down by typing in the school as well.
Another question just came in about contacting a borrower too many times that may be considered harassment. So what do you think? How many times would be appropriate in contacting from your perspective?
Just a general question outside of skip tracing. That's a difficult, there's really no cookie cutter response to that. I think it's circumstantial in a lot of situations. I mean, it really depends on the type of borrower you're dealing with. Are they cooperative, uncooperative? I mean, that would be the first thing to address here. And then from there, I mean, what are the continued contacts regarding? I mean, is it just a flat out, they're not looking to cooperate? Is it you're checking back in to see, the status, have things changed? Are they approved for a loan? Have they received additional assistance? It really depends on the nature of the contact, the situational, situation that the borrower's in. Are they cooperative? Are they not cooperative? So there's really no, like I said, cookie cutter response to that. I think it's all circumstantial. If you have an uncooperative borrower, I would say, you contact them, maybe make a follow-up call, at some point down the line, maybe a few days later. Maybe they're just having a bad day. I know we've all encountered that. Maybe you'll talk to somebody and then maybe a few days, a week later, you have a completely different conversation. But I think that, utilizing a switch call to kind of confirm the response that you got, maybe you got a negative response, maybe they just didn't like your voice or your personality. I think it's good to kind of mix it up with the borrower, and then at a certain time, you just kind of have to draw the line, like you're just not going anywhere on this. And are you dialing for dollars at that point, or are you just dialing just to, to reach the borrower? And that's really what it comes down to. Are you dialing for dollars? Is there the potential here to get paid for your clients? And that's really what should dictate, your efforts on the file, in my opinion.
And to kind of piggyback off of that as well, I mean, there are state laws as well that we have to adhere to. I don't have the sheet in front of me now, but I know Massachusetts, I think, is one that we can't have more than 2 contacts a week. So we also look at the state the state regulations so that we comply with those as well.
And again, I'd suggest that colleges and universities also be careful and mindful, because sometimes the state laws won't just pertain to third parties, but they're also going to be involved directly for first-party collections. So you need to be very aware in that case. Connie raises a question for you, Dean and Greg. Do you look at a student's Twitter account?
Absolutely. If it's open, yeah, I've received a lot of good information off Twitter accounts. A lot of them, I would say it's a 50-50 shot. Half of them are private, the other half are open. And I will scroll through a couple pages just to see if there's any links to, sometimes they'll put a Twitter, hey, listen, I lost my phone, here's my new phone number. And there's your link to that student.
Yeah, before we get to some other questions from participants, one thing just has my curiosity is you mentioned that. Are you finding that consumers today are more concerned about their privacy, and it's maybe a little bit harder than it was even a few months ago? in trying to get personal information.
I personally have seen a lot of friends, a lot of the sections in the friends section in Facebook disappear. So they've changed that personal setting. There's a lot of timeline information that isn't there now if they set their parameters on Facebook not to show their information. So, yeah, that has actually affected me as a collector here.
Greg, I know you had mentioned Accurate and some other sources that you have. John asks, are there any other websites other than social media that we can access? And then follow-up question to that, are there any inexpensive skip tracing sites or companies that you would recommend using?
I would say, to answer the first part of that question, yes, there are other sites on there. The ones that we've provided is more or less a foundation, a basic foundation, but a lot of times it's more specific to the borrower, which will dictate what sites you go to. For instance, there are, using the state of Illinois, for instance, if we have somebody that is a teacher in the state of Illinois, there is a website where you can go on there and pop in their social security number and last name. And if they are licensed to be a teacher in the state of Illinois, it will give you the school that they're working for. It'll give you their entire history. It'll also give you, a lot of times, the direct line to their division of the school. So the other sites that are available, they are out there, but I think it's good to, unless you already have a lead right off the bat, like if you have a number on a credit report or something like that, it's good to start with the foundation. And then as you're constantly asking yourself the question, what do I know about this borrower? That'll kind of steer you towards more specific sites. Like, for instance, there's attorney sites, medical licensing sites, things along those lines that you would explore those once you had a reason to go down that path. But I think it's always good to start at that point. And then in terms of other companies or vendors out there that I think that are good, that have been successful for us here, I know we brought in TLO recently. I wouldn't say recently. It's been about 2 years now. And, being in the business for 9 years, which isn't all that long, but it's long enough to at least, you hear a lot of vendors out there, our product is the best and this and that. After a while, you start to take it with a grain of salt. And I will say that when TLO came in, I said, oh, here comes another one. But no, that was not the case. I know TLO has some advantages to Accurate in that they provide email addresses are a little bit more accessible on there, or a little bit more prevalent on there. And as I mentioned, email addresses are key. A lot of times within the email address, it may be a company email, like a ERS Inc. type email address, something like that, where you can kind of draw conclusions in terms of where they're working, put that in a search engine. So I would say TLO for sure, and Accurate would be the two primary ones that we utilize that have been successful in terms of pay sites. Beyond that, I don't know that there's any that at least I'm aware of that have kind of knocked my socks off, so to speak, that I would vouch for. But I think within those two that have been named, I think we have a lot of success with those.
Greg or Dean, Carol asked a really interesting question. I think it probably has something to do with the search engines on the internet. And that's if you're putting in the name of a school, do these things look at aliases, like, for example, North Dakota State University? Should that be in there as North Dakota State University, or just the initials or an alias like NDSU? Or is it better just to do it both ways?
I say it's just like a name, in my opinion. Like, for instance, using my example, Gregory Edward Brown, I would start with that. I would start with North Dakota State University. If I didn't find any results with that, I'd probably narrow it down to NDSU. Something along those lines. So really the basic approach, like we do with the names and so forth, I would take that same approach to all the information that you're uncovering with the borrower. Maybe it's, like you find a borrower in, let's just say, a teacher in Los Angeles. Well, maybe you're looking for LAUSD, Unified School District. I mean, these are things that, you want to think broad and you want to think general as well. So if you're not finding it, maybe their information is more through a district. I mean, these are questions that you need to ask yourself. And that's why I say it's important to have the mentality, what do I know about this borrower? What do I know about their potential place of employment, about the areas they've resided in? And as you're asking yourself those questions, that's when creativity comes into play, which I think is really the most important aspect of skip tracing, is not is thinking outside the box and asking yourself questions here. And a lot of times with these accounts as well, I know I found this to be true. A lot of times you'll skip trace an account and maybe you just don't find anything one day. But maybe if you revisit that account in 2 days, maybe you start to think, I didn't think of that. Maybe let me try this. Let me try that. And, that I think it's just a matter of creativity. So to answer the question, I would say start broad, narrow it down, and just constantly think of different approaches to it. Think of different acronyms. Think of different zip codes. Think of different departments, different parent companies, things along those lines.
Can we go back for a second and talk about how to use LinkedIn briefly? This just to locate and maybe even to collect on an account. And the second question from Allison, any specific tips on locating and collecting from healthcare professionals?
Well, to answer your first question with LinkedIn, I do know that you've got to be able to provide a valid email address to at least get in to the LinkedIn data. If you try to search LinkedIn without being registered, it's not going to give you data. It'll say you need to register. So make sure that you've registered, and if whatever email address you want to use, as long as you have an account, you'll be able to view the data that is on the LinkedIn. And what was the second question was?
Any tips for locating or collecting? Allison asked about healthcare professionals, but I'd say attorneys, any professionals who might be licensed.
Well, what I have done over the past 20-plus years is I've established pretty much all 50 Bar Association websites and saved those as a link so that if I know that the borrower's an attorney, I'd go right to that state website. I'd go right and plug in their name, and bam, their job information's right there. So over the years, I've established that. So if I would strongly recommend that when you find a good site, save it and then categorize it in a folder so that the information's there for you to use. Like, for example, I've got a doctor folder. I've got a lawyer folder. My doctor folder has all these, the nursing website where I can go to any state and click and see if they're a licensed nurse. My doctor website has the AMA. I also have a dental board website. So there's a lot of information out there. So if, for example, I needed to find the state bar in Louisiana, I would go into Yahoo or Google, type in Louisiana State Bar, get that website up, save it, and plug it in for later use.
Here's a question from Thea about, are collection agencies on the do not call list?
Meaning specific, like, are we like a borrower? Marxist is do not call. I mean, it can happen where they set your number to block it and so forth. Yeah, that'll happen. Just like anything else, the answer will be yeah. In that regard.
Yeah, another question from Carol. What does NIXIE, N-I-X-I-E, mean on the label when mail is being returned?
I do not know.
I would Google it, just like anything else.
I actually think NIXIE is a service. I've seen this in New Jersey. In fact, law enforcement agencies use something I believe is NIXIE or something close to it as a means of pushing out alerts and specific public service information. But Carol, your assignment for after the webinar is to go out and Google and see what you find on NIXIE. Another question from Rashad. Which credit report, I would say probably credit reporting agency, do you feel is most accurate? And I'll just add a second part to that. What are the elements that make it best to use?
Well, for me as a collector, we use TransUnion here, and I'm a big fan of it. The data that I like to see is any kind of job information and or any phone numbers that will come up on the credit report. I've used Experian and Equifax in the past. I personally think TransUnion is best in my opinion, and it also gives detailed information on the dates of their addresses better than TransUnion does, better than the other reporting agencies.
And a lot of times on TransUnion, another thing just to piggyback on that point, one thing that I found on TransUnion that I kind of like is a lot of times if you have a place of employment, maybe you'll have like the name of the place of employment won't be clear, and maybe you Google it and it still doesn't make sense. But a lot of times TransUnion will also list the address for the place of employment. So you can take that address and you can drop that in a search engine like a Yahoo or a Google, and just by that address in the city, you can figure out what the name of the business is, and then from there, begin your search for a phone number to locate that borrower at that particular business.
And again, folks, just a reminder, if you have any other questions and you want to put those in the chat box now, or questions come up later, feel free to email Greg or Dean directly. Their email addresses were shown in the presentation. One last question I have for both of you is, campus collectors may get busy because they may not just be collecting money. They may have any number of different jobs that they're doing in a typical day. If they're needing to do skip tracing, what's the one best piece of advice you could offer them?
I would say be creative. Don't have a constantly, like I've said it a number of times, keep asking yourself the question, what do I know about this borrower? And describe, and apply, I should say, what you know about that borrower. I know when I first started in the business, somebody told me, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You could have a GED or you could be a Rhodes Scholar, and anybody can skip trace because everybody, has an imagination and can think about that borrower. And I know that, we've had collectors that have come in from other agencies that really haven't skip traced, and they were just amazed just by applying these basic approaches as to how successful they can be. So I would think it'd be creativity and thinking outside the box and constantly evolving your thought process, building upon your thoughts as you find clues. And I think it's the most exciting thing to do as a collector is to skip trace, because you almost feel like a private investigator as you're moving down that road. I think it's entertaining to a degree. I think that it keeps you sharp and it makes your day interesting. You can go home and you can talk to somebody, say, yeah, I tracked down this guy in Singapore, today, and so forth. And it's just really interesting. So I think it's being creative and constantly evolving your thought process.
As a collector, me personally, you got to think out of the box and just keep an open mind. You can actually get too involved in an account. It's happened to me before. I try to limit the time that I spend to no more than 10 minutes, but there are accounts that I've spent hours finding, and eventually 3 or 4 months down the road, I find the data that I'm looking for. But just keep an open mind and think out of the box is the suggestion that I would give.
Well, Greg and Dean, thank you so much. I got to say, I think I've learned more in the last hour I probably know in years in terms of really how to skip tracing. Danny, I don't know about you. I'm glad those directories aren't around right now. I'm done with crisscrosses. I'm moving to Facebook. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think same here, David. I think I'm going to start applying some of these techniques to find some of my long-lost relatives, too. What do you think?
Hey, I think anything's possible, but just it's the creativity part. I think that's been stressed really is important, because not just in locating individuals, but even in collecting, just how you maximize your return, just thinking a little bit outside the box, and different techniques that you can use to try and help consumers resolve their delinquencies, but at the same time bring money back for your institutions. So again, Greg and Dean, thank you so much. This has been great. And I'd like to turn this back over. Oh, go ahead, Danny.
Well, just one last thing. I think really there's a lot of really great content here. Given that everyone out there in the field, if you apply any of these new techniques, give us some feedback. Let ERS or Greg or Dean know what your experiences are. I'm sure they're going to be very positive. So, Steve?
Wow, outstanding, guys. Great job. Greg, thank you. Dean, thank you. Denny, David, really appreciate it. A copy of the webinar will be available tomorrow about the same time, so about 24 hours. If you go out to the ERS Inc. website, you'll be able to download the presentation along with the audio. So that'll be available to you. Again, Dean and Greg have provided their emails for contact. Certainly take advantage of that. Final thought, I really want to thank everyone for participating today out there. And there's a post-webinar survey available to you. Really appreciate it if you can go in there and provide any comments. We do look at those, and that does assist us as far as topics and subject matter and ways we can improve our future webinars. So again, thank you very much. The next webinar is December 5th, which is regarding compliance. Thank you and have a good rest of the day.